DeVaris, what's up?
Well, what's up, man? How you feeling?
Feeling great. How about yourself?
Oh man, it's a great moment in my life, in the life of Meroxa. But yeah, everything's cool. Yeah, I'm excited, man.
That's
So
awesome.
that's how I'm feeling.
Cool. Yeah, let's get into that just in a second. So, for people
Yeah,
who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
yeah. I'm DeVaris Brown. I am the CEO and co-founder of Meroxa. We are a real-time data platform as a service. Our belief is that anybody can be a data engineer with the right tool set. So Meroxa allows any data worker to build real-time data pipelines in minutes, not months. It's not hyperbole. It's not like just random ass marketing speak. Like, we've done this. Before Meroxa, I was the product leader for platform at Twitter, and then before that, I was the director of product for developer experience at Heroku. So I know a few things about developer platforms and run them at scale. And now it's kind of bringing that love and magic over into the data services ecosystem, right? Because I mean it's just sorely needed, right? So everybody got a tool, everybody got a framework, and it's just like they never think about these things as to how do they work, right? And so what Meroxa does is kind of evolve people from that integration conversation to orchestration. So the things will connect, right? So just know that. Where do you want your data to be? How fast do you want to get there? And then what format do you want it to be when it arrives there? And that's really what we solve.
That's awesome, man. And I guess you kind of alluded to this earlier. This is a really good day for you.
Yeah,
Uh,
man. GA, man. So yeah, we are opening up our self-service platform to the world, to the world, to the world. And yeah, we it's been a long time coming, but this is the first shot in the salvo for the industry to say, yo, you got to do better. Like they just got to do better, man. If they did better, we wouldn't exist. So thank you. But at the end of the day, it's just like, yo, there's a level of sanity and approachability and ease of use that's gonna come. I hate for this to sound like a giant commercial, but as you can tell, man, I'm super excited, right? Like, you know this, man. Like, you got a whole company like dealing with this stuff, right? Like, just helping people make reason about like all of the options, right?
mhm.
And so now it's just kind of like, all right, well, now the options can be reasoned about. Like, what do you want to do next?
Yeah, and yeah, I can definitely relate to just that sense of like hitting a milestone too, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, congrats on this big milestone. GA's no joke, and I
Yeah.
think I'm very excited for your success. You talk about like the industry needs to do better.
Yeah.
Like, what can you expand on that?
Yeah. I mean, look, man, at the end of the day, there's some great pieces out there, right? Change data capture, the Bezium is great. For event streaming, Kafka is great, right? For orchestration and ETL, Airflow is decent, right? So you know, for data quality, Great Expectations is pretty damn good, right? But all these things kind of exist in his own realm, and it's like they don't really play well with each other. And so at the end of the day, you have multiple tools that are fragmented, and like you basically have to have experts at every single like silo. And then you need to have like an integration team that's like, okay, well, I know how these two things connect, but you got to go hire the other person to get these two things to connect to each other, right? Like it's just like that's the state of the state, and people are okay with that, right? Like they're fine with that. I mean, just kind of some secret sauce behind the hood, man. When I was thinking about doing Meroxa, I went and interviewed with a lot of our competition, right? And just to see, like, yo, do we have a good 18 to 24 months, or they just weren't going to care about, kind of this bottoms up rhythm and then, like, developer experience. And they're like, look, let's be flat out honest. Our developer experience, the lack thereof, is a feature because it gives us the ability to charge people twice, once for access to the platform, the second for a services agreement, right? And so I get it. It's good business and it's good unit economics, but it's just bad experience, right? And so for me, it's just kind of like, well, what if we just enabled everybody to be a data engineer, right? Like there's a shortage of good data engineering talent, right? But then there's also like so many other people that use data in their jobs, but they're not just able to use the tools to help them do their job. So why not just go fix that problem, right? And like that's really what we're focused on. And so that's why I'm like, yo, everybody's on notice. You gotta, it just has to be better, right? And like that's the mindset that we have.
That's awesome. I guess it is interesting. In the last, I would say, 5 years, or whatever, there's been sort of there's been a lot of SaaS platforms coming out in the data engineering space, right? But I mean, to your point, the developer experience has been sort of mixed. I mean, do you think that? Why do you think that's been?
Because people are coin operated batteries, man. Like, just be honest, right? Like everybody. So I think there's a few things: coin operated batteries, the rise of the data warehouse vendors, right? Like just making things easier, and then the rise of DBT, right? Yeah, exactly. Like Snowflake, right? Like before it was, yo, let me get everything in HDFS, and then I'll figure it out from there, right? Now it's but the problem is getting data out of HDFS was non-trivial. So people had to learn, Hive and Pig and, write these like gnarly ass Hadoop jobs, right? And it's like, yeah, I'm a data analyst who's been doing SQL all of my life, right? Like you're not going to pay me to learn Java and Scala and Python, right? Like that's just not a thing. Especially if I've just been using Excel spreadsheets for most of my career and I can, kind of reason about the SQL landscape. So when Snowflake and Redshift and BigQuery came around, they're like, nah, you can do all this and just write it, just regular ANSI SQL to get the same type of, kind of results. Then that just enabled a whole larger class of folks to say like, okay, well now we can be productive with the data landscape. And so then that's when the tooling landscape was like, oh, all we have to do is get everything into a data warehouse and then we're done. We don't have to do any transformations. We ain't got to do none of that. It's just kind of lift and shift. Perfect. We can go do that. Right. And so that's, kind of the rise of the ELT stuff. Right. And so, yeah, I mean, I get it. Right. And like, that's when, you look at any foundational technology, like when Docker was around, that you started seeing like Docker monitoring, Docker security companies, like all that type of stuff. Right. And so, now it's kind of the same thing with the data warehouse landscape. Now you're starting to see, like I said, DBT is just kind of, I like what they've done a lot. And now you can just kind of aggregate from a bunch of sources and write SQL there. So it's just like SQL is the kind of linchpin that unlocked all of this productivity and unlocked the ecosystem. But for us, it's just kind of like, yeah, man, that's really what has happened over the last, I don't know, few years. And you're seeing like all these like reverse ETL companies now and like, all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, we'll get there. It'll get better. Everything starts kind of interesting in its nascency, but yeah, it'll get better.
I guess where do you see the role of a data engineer sort of evolving into over the next few years then?
Yeah, I mean, I think just higher throughput, right? I think the data engineer will become less of that terraformer and become more of a plumber, right? Like so they won't necessarily have to like create something from nothing all the time, right? And like they will basically turn into administrators, right? And because the plumbing is just so easy for them to connect, right? And I think they'll move up higher in the value chain where they're doing more, kind of doing more of the data sciencey type stuff and providing more value on that aspect if they want to, right? Because it's just so much easier at that point for them to go do those things.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a question I've been wrestling with a lot too. Kind of where's it going? So,
Yeah.
because it seems like I mean, to your point, like it was data engineering was a lot more software engineering heavy back in the day. In fact, I think that was the original title of a data engineer. You're just a software engineer way back in the day, trying to put these systems together. Then you became a big data engineer, and then I guess a data engineer.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is interesting just because the friction of implementing these pipelines is drastically being reduced. I mean, by all means, as you alluded to earlier, you could do Debezium and Kafka and Airflow if you want, and maybe there's a time and a place for doing that. But see, for majority of companies, I don't know that you need to do that to yourself. So
Yeah, I mean, some folks feel like they need to. So, they read a blog article, like they see like Pinterest is doing that, or they see some other, and they're like, oh, we have to go do that. So here's budget for, 20 data engineers to go build this thing for us over the next, 8 to 12 months. Right. And that's kind of like, really? That's it's like hockey, right? Like, just get more bodies, just dump them over and just kind of do that. And it's like that should really tell you that the inefficiencies of software are pervasive, right? Like, the answer in this day and age is to throw more bodies at it. Like, you should be questioning the status quo.
mm-hmm. And I guess the question that I always have is, okay, so you're a tooling company that's going to make it easier for data engineers to do their jobs. Who do you sell this to in a company, and I guess how do you go about selling it? Because I imagine some data engineers, if they're doing stuff the kind of the programmatic way, might be a bit resistant, right?
Well, I mean, we're not just like, we got CLI and API, right? And
Right.
so the best thing is, like, you just kind of BYOD, bring your own database and bring the credentials, and then we are just the system that sits on top of that helps you, basically be the experience layer to help you be the puppet master to connect this stuff together, right? And orchestrate the data between it. So, like, we want to be the Lucius Fox to a data engineer's Batman, right? Like, we're not sitting up here saying like, yo, we want to replace you. We just want to give you some superpowers, all right? So now when random data analyst comes in and asks you for a persistent pipeline to show how many widgets were sold in the MIA last year, right? Like, you can just say, okay, cool. Meroxa add, Meroxa connect, and then you're done, right? And like, you can get to more, you doing whatever else is you want to do versus, man, I gotta, spin up Docker and I gotta do this and I gotta, like, make sure my observability and my monitoring is in place. And then, like, let me send some test packets and just make sure that the data is getting from one place to the next. Oh, okay, well, it works on my machine. Now I gotta ball this up into a container and deploy it on the EKS or GKS or GKE or something like that. And like, now I got to deal with that. And like, oh wait, I need to go. Like, it's just all this stuff that's in between. Like, it's never about the actual pipeline building, right? Like, it's easy to get data from one place to another. It's making that sure that that thing can run with consistency and high availability. That's the issue, right? Like, once a data engineer has their stack, it's really easy. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like, how do you do that repeatably and reliably? That's the problem. So we basically sell into the heads of data, the data engineers, the head of data scientists, head of platform engineering, like folks who are responsible for the data infrastructure initially. And then, yeah, even analysts, right? Like, we get those folks coming in. So it's really bottoms up, right? Like, our whole approach is make it stupid easy for people to sign up. No, like, sales folks call us later kind of joints, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, long ass sales presentations and discovery calls and all that. It's like, no, just go to Meroxa.com, sign up, email address, credit card, call it a day. You get first 5 million events processed for free. And then after that, that's when we turn the meter on, basically. So that's it, man. But, again, we want to be easy and approachable. So anybody that has, because eventually, like, look, man, our goal is, at the end of the day, if you have a database, right, and you're like, you know what, I just want to add some real time stuff. You just Meroxa, brew, install Meroxa, wherever your favorite package manager is. Just install it from there. You up and going. Like, that's it. Like, anybody can use it at that point. So
Interesting. And you bring up real time as well. I mean, what's your take on a company starting out? And I imagine there's different types of companies. Do you recommend a company start with real time, or do you recommend they start with kind of more of a batch oriented approach?
I mean, you can start with batch, but it's for us, it's like, let's get the data into your data store, right? The difference between real time and batch to us is just the granularity of data,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like for us, because we do change data capture at the data source, you're just going to get a level of granularity that you wouldn't get from just writing a SQL query that's taking a snapshot of that data in point in time, right? Because all the changes are getting all the upserts and inserts and all the deletes and all of that, right? So there's just much more that you can do with that more granular information. But I mean, honestly, we can just keep data sources in sync with their
Right.
destinations if you want to, right? And so the interesting thing with that is that like now you're able to it's easy to go from like real time to batch. You just can't go the other way around, right? Like I can't like write more SQL queries or like execute SQL queries faster to get to a real time aspect, right? It's just micro batch at that point. It's just like distributed crime. So for us, it's just kind of like, yo, we just if you had that data available in the moment that the thing happened, you can just make more intelligent decisions, right? And so I would say every company is a data company. Every company needs to be a real-time data company, right? And because like, I was talking to somebody yesterday and they were like, oh, we had this abuse job that would run and basically like see how many units were provisioned under false pretenses within the last hour. But like then that meant I'm trying to be intentionally vague because I like if I
Yep.
say like what they actually do, then like you kind of glean what they do. I don't want to point anybody bad, but basically they had a batch job that like would run every hour to figure out who abused the system. But like by that time, the system, the people who had abused it had already done their job, right? Like and like spammed millions of people using whatever the unit of
Mhm.
consumption was for that thing, right? So it's just like, yo, if you were able to see this information in real time, you wouldn't have had to run a batch job that does this every hour, right? Like that's the problem.
Mhm.
And so for us, it's just kind of like, well, if we can see the unit provisioned event, we can like run a check at that point in time to figure out if it's real or not, and then like we can basically say like, oh nope, we're not going to provision or give them access to that unit, right? Like just basic things like that, anomaly detection, right? Like that becomes table stakes, right? Like that's that's the sexy thing. It's just like, I think everybody needs to have real time because you, like I said, you can go from real time to batch. Like we're not
Mhm.
saying like everything has to be streaming. You can just dump it into a data warehouse. You can dump it into a data lake if you want to, and then you can just run your batch operations from there. It's just like, what are you able to do with that data packet in real time, right? Like what
Mhm.
are the experiences that you can unlock, right? And like I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah. I think so. We're at a kind of an interesting inflection point too, where real time is becoming, I think, realistic. Um, it's becoming democratized, I think, for the first time, right?
Yep.
Whereas even a couple years ago, uh, it was a nice thing to do, but you really did have to spin up infrastructure back in the
Yep.
day, like Kafka, and then I guess you'd have to have a really good reason for doing that because it ain't cheap. So
Yep. Exactly.
um, even if your systems are cheap, you still got to pay somebody. So
Yep.
um, yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I'm very fascinated to see where the whole space goes over the next few years, and just in terms of adoption tooling and whatnot. It definitely seems like we're in this, sort of the. It definitely feels like there's a reshuffle happening in real time. No pun
Yep.
intended, right? So yeah,
Well, your dry humor is amazing. I didn't even catch that until you said pun intended.
geez, sorry. As dry as the desert I live in. So um, yeah, it's interesting. Back to Meroxa real quick, and I mean, just running a startup. I mean, you aren't just the technical, head of it. I mean, you're running a company. I mean,
Yeah.
was is this a walk me through your kind of your I guess for lack of a better word entrepreneurial journey
Yeah.
into this.
Uh, I've always been the CTO, right? And a co-founder. I've always been the number two. Um, and I have always basically helped other people kind of reach their visions and all that type of stuff. And not to get too sappy, but like most people don't know, like this is the kind of the real, so you get an exclusive, man. Like the real reason why I started Meroxa was because of my grandfather. And My grandfather was he grew up in the American South in the 40s and 50s. Son of a sharecropper and like all that type of stuff down in Marion, Alabama. When my granddad left and when he was a teenager to come up to Chicago, and he worked at U.S. Steel, and he got to the point where he could have been a vice president, but in 1981 they told him that they couldn't let a black man be a vice president or be an exec. So he left and started his own company. And he was at a Montgomery Wards one day, and he saw like a pickup truck coming up and picking up brake pads. And he asked the guy like, "Yo, what is that? Like, why is everybody doing that?" And he's like, "Well, they basically go and get the brake pads, and then they melt them down and get them back into a form that the auto companies can use." So he started his own secondary aluminum smelting company. Now the funny thing is, my granddad didn't graduate high school, but somehow went to Illinois Institute of Technology and got a metallurgical degree at
No
some point,
way.
like going to night school, right? And so he figured out over time, basically how to, if somebody gave him 100 pounds of scrap metal, right, he could get 99 pounds of that out of that in the melt, which is unheard of because like you lose it to all types of impurities, just like it just gets lost in the melt, like all that type of stuff, right? But he figured it out how to get, and the industry standard at that time, depending on like the alloy, was like 88 to 92% recovery. That's what they call it, right? It's like, but he consistently hit 99%, right? And he did it in an eco-friendly way. So the way that people were doing it before was gas fire furnaces, right? Which you need a lot of gas and a lot of energy. He figured out how to do it from electrical, right? Nobody had ever done this before, and so just seeing him go through that, and like I was, he was entered, so if you drink a can of pop, Ball and Rexham make the cans. They get their aluminum from Alcoa, which is in Kentucky. That's my granddad's aluminum, right?
No
And
way.
so, right, like I saw that process, right, and from a very young age, and like seeing him going and the trials and tribulations that he had and whatever. Fast forward to 2018, 2019, he gets sick, and I'm spending most of my time in Lexington, Kentucky, and at the time I was working at Heroku, and I'm doing okay. I'm doing some good things there. And we're watching CNBC in his hospital bed, and he's like, some random ass tech entrepreneur comes. I think it was the guy from Snapchat or something like that, and he's like, "I don't understand why you haven't been a CEO and just tried to do your thing. Just go get a couple of your friends and just figure it out. Like what are you waiting for? Like just you need to go be the one to do it. And I was just like, well, I'm scared. Like that's a lot of responsibility and all that type of stuff. But he, really breathed life into me and gave me the confidence to go do this thing. So for me, that's really what has been. Is like I can nerd out on technical stuff all day and do that whole thing, but really I shied away from all the leadership aspects of the job because it was just, for me, it's just like that's another dimension where I would need to go get stretched and learn and all that type of stuff. It's just easy to rest on the technical aspect, right, and do that because I've just done it so much. But I mean, to be honest, man, like it's just like any other technical problem. You just got to figure it out
Mm-hmm.
and just realize there's systems in place and frameworks in place to help you do your job a lot better, a lot more efficient. And really that's what it's been. So I really credit him for helping me do that. And then to be honest, man, like I've been around a lot of great leaders and CEOs um, and some not so good ones, and just realizing like, yo, what do I want to do, when I want to be, how do I want to be, and what I don't want to be. And like that self-awareness that I have in my personal life has translated well to me being a leader and a CEO this time around. So I mean, you can't ask me, you got to ask the people that work with me how I'm doing, but
Mm-hmm.
I think we're doing pretty okay. And so yeah, that's really where my entrepreneurial spirit came from.
That's a great story, by the way. That's really good
Appreciate it, man.
context. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting how we all sort of end up kind of where we are. If you're running a company, right? I think everyone's got. It was always some impetus. It wasn't. I don't know if it was ever. It was like sort of a chain of events, really. But I'd like to take on this, like running a company. You and I both come from, I think, more kind of left brain technical backgrounds than the right brain stuff. I mean, how was it learning, I guess, the softer skills, management, how to lead, um, I guess everything related to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, basic principles. Treat people how they want to be treated, right? Like, like people try to make it so academic sometimes, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just like, listen to folks, treat people how they want to be treated. Like, I mean, you got some basic principles as a CEO that you have to follow. Like, make sure everybody gets paid, make sure they get their benefits on time, right? Like, if you do that, that's like 90% of the battle. And then I would say the rest of it is like give them meaningful work and autonomy as to like, actually give them meaningful work, show them what your expectations are, and then give them autonomy to go satisfy that, right? Like, I think like if we do that, my job is pretty easy at that point, right? Like that's what it's been. And then like the other thing I realized over time that annoyed the shit out of me was like never treat people as a monolith, right? Like everybody has their own ways that they operate that motivate them, like all, like just take the time to learn that, because if you don't, then you're going to miss out on just like the small things, right? And those small things add up to large mounds of frustration over time. And
Mm-hmm.
so one of the things that I did as a product leader, that I think, if you're a product manager, your number one job is empathy anyway, right? And so I mean your number one tool is empathy, and so you have to use that and weaponize that, so that way you get you build emotive relationships with your audience, you build emotive relationships with internal stakeholders as well, and the people that you work with, right? Like that's the big thing. And so I just use that, right? Like we send out a survey before anybody's hired, any of that type of stuff, and we just ask them some very pointed questions about behaviors and motivations and those types of things. And like we just use that, right? Like not everybody likes to be talked to over email or Slack. Some folks want a text message, some folks want to, like, especially in times of conflict, and you just have to know that, right? Like just being aware that different people operate in different ways. Like you just have to use that not only in a product sense, but like, this is how you run your company as well.
Mm-hmm.
We got ideal customer personas and all that other stuff for making money, but like, why don't we use that for like actually building a company? And
Right.
like, that's the thing that I think has been, we use that. So
Yeah, especially when these are people that dedicating a lot of time, and you're dedicating a lot of time to them too. Like,
yep.
I think your team is who you're going to be spending most time with, even more than your family. Sorry, my camera's all fuzzy here. Yeah, it's interesting. I even did this with my business partner. I was reading the book Crucial Conversations,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a quiz in it just about your communication style, and I gave it to him, and we ended up being complete opposite communication styles. I tend to be probably a bit more aggressive. He tends to just be very silent.
Wait, you aggressive? Come on, man.
Well, firm.
Yeah, I was about to say, hold on, man. I couldn't imagine that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was interesting though, and so I think it definitely, I think, kind of illuminated how you know we needed to end up communicating with each other, because it was and so forth. But as I grow my team, I'm definitely cognizant of that kind of stuff too. It's because communication's everything, really. And
Yep.
as you point out, treat people how they want to be treated, but also it's it's a double-edged sword, because everyone responds differently to communication. So, and like you say, nobody's a monolith. And,
Yep. Exactly.
yeah, it's interesting. I found those have been, I'd say, the more interesting parts of running a business is the technical part. I think is like pretty table stakes, actually, because that's just,
Yep.
it's assumed that you're in the business of technology, therefore you should probably be pretty good at it, right? But it's like all the other stuff, convincing people to come work with you, right?
Yep.
Like that's
Yep. People are hard, man. I mean, like that's the thing. You can tell a computer what to do, but you can't. Everybody has. There's some of all of their experiences, and you have to kind of glean and connect dots very very fast to like see how those experiences shape the person that you have before you today. A lot of people just don't care enough to do that, right? Like, they just see people as resources, right, instead of like humans. And
Right.
the thing is, the weird trippy part is, if you understand them at a human level, you'll actually get more productivity out of them,
Hmm.
right? Because people will work for harder and longer for folks that like where they feel that they belong, right? And like that sense of belonging is innate in everybody, right? And you can get that through the mission, you can get that through the shared problem set, and it's usually a combination of both, right? And so you need to like kind of build these emotional relationships with folks, um in order to get more productivity. Because like the other thing too is that sometimes you need a little bit of grace. You need a little bit of understanding, and like folks that you see as resources that aren't bought into to you as a human, right? And they're just kind of there, just kind of checking boxes. If that's the case, then the first time that there's turmoil, they're out, right?
Hmm.
And like you don't want that. You want people. This startup journey is not for the faint of heart. It's gonna be ups and downs, and hopefully it's gonna kind of undulate up and to the right. But like at the end of the day, you just want to have people that are gonna weather the storm with you. And so, I mean, it should be telling that I think we're up to 26, 27 folks right now.
Nice.
I've literally worked with 22 or 23 of the people directly. And these ain't like these people that go anywhere and everywhere to make ungodly sums of money, but like these are folks that from when I started my professional career that have basically been along with me on this journey,
Mm.
right? And like now that I'm doing a thing, it was just like it wasn't even like an interview. It was just like, yo, come home, come work. And they're like, dude, of course. Like, yeah, it was just an easy conversation. So, I think for me, that's why, getting to know people beyond just them being a resource has helped, kind of be, get us to this point where we're not only building a great product, but we're building a great company as well.
Right.
And that's the three-legged monster I try to tell, founders like, yo, don't worry. Yes, you got to build a great product, but build a great company and build a great business too, right? Like that's the three-legged monster that as a founder and a co-founder, that is your duty to kind of figure it out. And if you can do that, sky's the limit.
Yeah. I mean, I think a great company is it makes great products,
Yep.
right? I mean, but the opposite isn't true. I can think of very few exceptions where if you have a great product, like you're going to have a great company as a result.
Yeah.
I don't know if you
Well,
can
the
think of one.
interesting thing is, man, like a lot of startup founders kind of go through this thing where they just think like, they try to skip steps, man. Like, we always try to hyper optimize, but I'm a student of every industry, right? And so, you look at the CPG space, right? You look at Procter and Gamble, they got like 40 different dishwashers or laundry detergents, right? But they're all focused at a very specific market
Hmm.
segment, right? And so just because you have a product doesn't mean that you have a great business. Just because you have a great business doesn't mean that you have a brand, right? Like a
Right.
brand is attached to a persona, it has like an emotional buy-in, like all this other type of stuff, and they go through this like chain every single time. Like, yo, we got Gain, but we also got Tide, but we also got whatever that blue stuff is that is like for hospital clinics and stuff, Persol or whatever it's called, right? Like they go through that, and even though it's under the same umbrella, it's like, no, we've built a product to focus. Gain is for the millennials that like to smell goods. Tide is for the families because this thing, and then Persol is for like people who are really really self conscious, right? Like about disinfecting and blah blah blah, right? Like product. Then they built the business unit economics. So it's like, okay, well, this version of Gain is only available in this market in this region because it fits our persona, and like we're gonna do this, right? And then they build a brand around it. So that's the thing. But startups, they just think, yo, I got a product, I got a brand. It's easy, it's done.
Right.
All right. And they haven't even figured out the unit economics around it. They're just spraying and praying and everybody can use it and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, you gotta step back. You gotta really, really figure out what this thing is and really drill in on that market and just own your silo, right? And like that's the thing where it's, people just don't think about these things because they just want to get the thing out to the market and say I told you last time, man, everybody want to be a founder. Not everybody wants to be a CEO. It's like there's the founder part is the cool, sexy, like, oh, I get put on my LinkedIn profile and all this other stuff. But like CEO stuff is like, nah, I got to deal with like benefits and payroll and sales and, like all that type of stuff, like filling gaps every day and like doing the things that I'm not, probably the best at, but just kind of figuring it out reactively, right? Like those are the things that you kind of come up in this journey. So
well, yeah, and I think everyone wants a title CEO too, but
yeah.
I don't think if people know what that entails, it's a shit ton of work, and you get to own everything. I think it's if you want like the toughest job in the world, take that title. Well, I wouldn't say take the title, do the job. It's easy to get the title.
Yep.
I mean, I can go spin up an LLC right now for 15 different companies and have CEO for every one of them, to your point, make a brand. Like you own the brand as a CEO, right? Like you actually, the buck stops with you with everything. It doesn't really matter what it is. You can go ahead and delegate, but you're still responsible for the outcome. It doesn't matter,
yep.
right? And so, yeah, and I noticed this with technical people as well. Like I remember I was sitting with one of the last lunches I had was some tech event, and yeah, this guy sat next to me, and he used to be a CTO of a very large company actually, and now he's CMO of a startup. But the dude would not shut up about how better his product was than everything else. And it was a classic what they call the better trap, where your product is just it's better on features, and so obviously you should buy it because it's better, it's got more features. So why wouldn't you buy it, right?
I mean, shit, I would buy it. That means I would buy a Hyundai instead of a Benz, right?
Right. Or a Bolt instead of a Tesla, right? It's feature on feature. You can keep that race going all day, and it's exhausting. And it's funny because I think a lot of the products I've seen out there, especially in the data engineering space, and I'm not going to name names, but a lot of recent startups, they focus on the features and not really like. I think what I found interesting about when you were talking about your GA and putting the industry on notice, is like you're talking about the developer experience and how that needs to be improved. Not like, well, we have like 70 connectors versus your 68 connectors, so we're better, right? Like, why wouldn't you use us?
Yeah, man. I mean, like that's that Geico phenomena, right? Like we could do it in 15, and Liberty Mutual comes like, "Yo, we got it in 10,"
right?
And then, like Esurance is like, "No, we do it in 7," right? Like everybody just keeps that race to the bottom.
Yeah, it's like the 5-minute abs.
So. Like, nah, we could do it in 3. Yeah, man. And I'm still looking at my stomach like, yo, where you at? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I agree, man. It's like the thing is, and that's the nuance, man. Is like, you look at this industry, there is no shortage of connectors to connector platforms out there. And so that was the wild part for us, was just like, yo, there are so many of these like connector to connector platforms out there. Like, why aren't people using them, or why aren't they happy? And then you scratch beneath the surface and you're like, oh, they're just dumping stuff into S3 and like letting people figure it out from there, right? Like, that's not really what we do. Or they're white labeling DBT underneath the hood once it gets dumped into S3, and then allowing, basically providing a way for people to dump it, transform it there and dump it into other places, right? Like, they're honestly just distributed cron job schedulers. That's really what they are at the end of the day. And the problem is, like, now you got to kind of figure out, like, okay, how do I get data in from there, in from those places? But then what we really realized was that all of these platforms are basically just glorified Singer rejects. And so they have these like, very, very rigid schemas. And so anytime that the upstream changed their schema, it would break everything downstream, right? And it's like, you've been in the meetings, man, where you just like, you see that graph where it's like up, dip, up, dip. And you're like, don't pay attention to the dips. We had data quality issues that day. And then I'm listening there as like a stakeholder, like, yo, why would I pay attention to the rest of the graph? I don't trust, that type of thing, right? And it's usually because somebody changed their schema, the pipeline fell down, like all this other type of stuff, right? And so Like literally every one of those platforms is that, right? Like we talked to people that basically were running these job scheduler kind of things that had millions of connectors to millions of destinations. And it's like, yeah, the jobs would just take, hours, right? And we had no guarantee that like the data was going to reach the other side, right? And like all that type of stuff. And jobs would fail more than 50% of the time and like all this other stuff. And it's just like I'm basically I'm working on 24 hours in arrears data. You mean to tell me that in a day you can't get all of my data into a place I need it to be? Like that's been a solved problem since, I don't know, I was using like SSIS from Microsoft or whatever that kind of ETL tool was, you kind of drag and drop back in the day, right? Like this has been solved problems before. The movement of data has been solved. Like, why is this such a problem now? Oh, it's the amount of data. And it's like, well, I don't know, man. We were dealing with a lot of data back then too. So it's just like you said, man, it's about the experience. Like, we like to say we are software system engineers first, software engineers second, because we just care about like helping people do the jobs that they want to do. I just want to move my data from one place to the next with certainty that the data is going to reach the destination, the format that I need in the time that I need it. And like, if we can solve that, man, that's more than half the battle. So let's just do that for now and build a reputation around consistency and approachability and experience. Like that's it, man. That's I would love to say that secret sauce, but like that's literally what software is. Mm-hmm. It's like I'm taking this manual ass job and making it easier for me to do, and that's really what we want to do. And we're probably going to be, well, not probably, we're going to be the best in the world to go do that.
That's awesome. I mean, it reminds me a lot of this company when they came out. It wasn't that I think they could have fell into the better mousetrap syndrome, but they just made life a lot easier for people.
Yep.
Right. If you're using Redshift of the day, and no offense to Redshift, we're AWS partners. Disclaimer.
Shout out to Redshift. Thank you.
Shout out to Redshift. But the user experience could be better. So,
yep.
And so what I'm seeing right now is companies popping up that are making the just the ease of using these data platforms better. I mean, I noticed Upsolver, they just they raised a Series A today, and they're doing kind of an easier to use data lakehouse, right? You don't have to spend a Spark, you just put in a credit card and get going. And I think it's interesting right now because as I'm writing my data engineering book, it's having to lay out, okay, so here's what used to be done.
Yep.
Here's what's being done now, and in the future, I suspect it's going to actually be a race towards better developer experience and better user experience, overriding almost everything else. Just simplifying the process to the point I suspect where a lot of data engineering tooling will be about as seamless as like electricity, and you just don't even notice because it works.
Yep. Yeah.
You don't when you turn on the light in your house, I mean, you're not sitting like, wow, this is such a joy. This is so fascinating that this works. It's just like, who cares? It works. Like, let's fire up my turntables and do the thing. So
yeah. Oh, we haven't even talked about that, man. Like, we haven't even gotten to how me and you are even more connected beyond this data stuff.
Right.
Yeah. So funny, I thought about you the other day because we are we are doing our demo videos and all that type of stuff, and then our evangelist is like, man, I need to go find some royalty free music. I'm like, what? Absolutely not. If anything, Meroxa will have the best backing soundtracks to our demo videos in the game, period. I'm putting that out there right now. Like, man, it is. I'll send the track to you afterwards, but
cool.
I think you will appreciate it. It's kind of glitchy, dubsteppy, but it's still very, very in context.
That's awesome. And you produced it?
Yeah.
So for the audience who doesn't know, all right, so obviously you can tell that I DJ and produce music. DeVaris,
oh, yeah.
Same thing. when I
Yep.
first met DeVaris on the call, we felt like we were like long lost brothers. So Data plus DJ nerds, so music
Yep.
producers. It's pretty
Yep. Yep.
hilarious. Yeah. It's,
Yeah.
I mean,
I find a lot of folks in this industry, they do music, man. A lot of band geeks, a lot of folks, that had music careers before they even, kind of started doing programming and things like that. Like,
mhm.
it's kind of interesting. I wonder what the correlation is between that.
It's interesting. I mean, it's hard to say. I know a lot of old DJ friends I have. They're in the tech or data industry now. Like a lot of data scientists, a lot of software engineers. I think they were working as software engineers at the time too. Um, but I know, it's that experience. I know. I don't know. I'd like to get your take on this. But I know DJing in clubs, for example. I mean, that helped me a ton in terms of just, I think, giving me um, just confidence to, I think, being in public and improvising, and kind of thinking on your feet, and responding to sort of the mood of the crowd, right? And adjusting accordingly. Like, I think those are really good skills. So,
Yeah. I got a series of blog posts, man. That are gonna come out is like the hip hop guide to product management, and like one of them is like why I think Drake is probably, if you're doing A/B testing, you should model your career after Drake, because what Drake does, I think, better than anybody is he leverages SoundCloud and analytics to help shape his future albums. So for folks that are not big Drake fans, literally he'll put out one or two singles at like every 6 months just to kind of test the market to see like how they respond to anything. And if you notice the albums that come out, they all sound like whatever, kind of like what was responded to favorably. And like, if I think about that, that's just A/B testing, right?
mhm.
Like
Yep.
he literally canary tested and A/B tested his audience to figure out who likes what, who's going to gravitate to what. And then like, he'll just create an album based off of those things. And I think that's, you know, again, music parallels over into the software world. Another
Yeah.
thing I realized too was like when I became a better software engineer, I became a better producer
Hmm.
because I started. I mean, creativity within guardrails, and I think that's the other thing, which is like you get these frameworks, you get these platforms, right? And it's like, well, what can I do, right? And it's like there's a million VSTs out there. There's a million instruments and kind of outboard equipment that you can use, but it's like, no, I need to focus. So what's my stack going to be
Right.
for this body of work, right? Like what libraries I'm going to grab or what things am I going to use, right? And it's like, yeah, that's kind of how I produce now. Like I got my mastering chain that's already built in Ableton. I got like I got my own particular sound, you know what I'm saying? Like there's things that I know I can go grab particular instruments. Like I got, like my stack, right? And
Hmm.
like, it just helps me approach creativity a lot more easier because I don't have to worry about all the kind of external things that would come in and kind of
Right.
delay me before.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I remember kind of on the A/B test note too, like making a track and playing it, at a club. Like make a track maybe that evening, later go play it at a club, and just get the response, right? And you go tweak
Yep.
it a bit because it's um, like a live forum's really good. I mean, this is before I think SoundCloud was like kind of where it is. Where I think now it's a lot better. Again, you can put things on SoundCloud or Spotify and just get an opinion. But yeah, it's the live environment's good. Did you DJ much back in the day too?
Oh
I
yeah.
think you were.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
definitely. Yeah. I miss it, man. I miss it. Like that crowd reaction when you drop a song where they
Uh-huh.
just have never heard before and you like and they start getting into it. I've had a few moments like that. And I'm just like, yo, I miss that. I miss that. Being able to have the people come up to you at the end of the night and be like, yo, I had such a terrible day. I wasn't even gonna come out tonight, but like, man, you helped me get through whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like that, I miss that.
Hmm.
All right. Like
Same.
that's the part of DJing. I don't miss the drunk folks spilling shit and coming up and asking me for like some random ass, Taylor Swift
Yeah.
song like times in the night. Like I don't miss that part. But like the other parts of it I do miss.
Yeah, I think whenever COVID gets back to normal, it's going to be. I'm very fascinated to see what the live scene is like.
Yeah.
Across any, clubs or festivals or whatever. I suspect it's going to be bigger than ever, but
Yeah.
we'll find out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it should be crazy. What's your do you have a favorite VST in Ableton or instrument?
I use all the native instrument stuff, man.
Oh,
And
nice.
then like Omnisphere. I'm huge into that. I like the sounds that come out of that. RC20, like the retro color VSTs. Honestly, I use the output stuff.
Hmm.
All of their kind of like the sounds and things that they have. I mean, it's just amazing that the things that I wish I could have had when I was growing up and
Right.
like having to learn to sample and like all that stuff. Like, I mean, I literally can travel just my laptop in Ableton and make magic. And it's so crazy to think about that now. Like I could literally play the keyboard on my keyboard, right? Like it's not great, but there's so many tools and things that I could use to kind of put things together. And it's just like, man, that's really yeah, those are the top ones that I use.
Yeah, when I picked up the MK3 the other day for the launch pad. I'm waiting for the Push 3 to come out, but I might be waiting for a bit. It might be so. But yeah, because it's just really portable, right? So 'cause I do the same thing on my laptop of Ableton and a bunch of the Arturia synths, and just if I'm not writing or programming or reading, it might be it's just fun to have that at your disposal. And the
Yep.
crazy thing is, Ableton is it's more powerful than I would say a lot of studios were even maybe 20, 30 years ago. It's
Yep.
nuts. Everyone
It's
has this
nuts to think
capability.
about that, man. I mean, like you talk about making a beat, bro. Like at my desk right now, Ableton push right here, keyboard right here, right? Obviously you see the mic,
Yeah.
and so like for me, it's just like I do one a week.
Hmm.
It's just one of those things where it's just like I pick a sample. So I'm a sample based producer, but pick a sample, put all the instrumentation arrangements around it, and then like by the end of the week I have something. Like I noodle on it pretty much every day, and then I got something that I can like play out to the world. So
Hmm.
for me, it's like that's super important just to have as a release. And then
Yeah.
as you see, the turntables are back that way.
Yeah.
So I keep those all at the ready, man. So if there's like some at lunch, I'll do like random scratch practice or like if I hear a song, download it, try to figure out how I could blend it with something else, and blah blah
Hmm.
blah. Like just keep the mind going outside of just programming and business stuff.
I find it helps too with business and that I think it maintains good flexible thinking,
Yep.
right? So 'cause you're constantly having to be creative and we talked about earlier just improvising, and I think music is it's a really good outlet for that, and especially if you have it at your disposal. Like I have synths on my phone. Fucking nerd. It's kind of
Dude,
crazy.
I used to do the 15-minute beat challenges, man, on with the machine app, like taking Bart from wherever it is to
Nice.
my job, and like I would have to make like sketch something out, and like me and my friends, we would send things, back and forth together on our commutes. Like that's just it's just fun stuff, man. I like it.
Yeah, one thing that occurred to me too, the fact we're using these tools now, right? Like Ableton, machine, everything else, it's like super easy to use. I mean, it's kind of like the data tools, right? Where
I see what
you
you
had
did there, Joe.
what's that?
Good. I said I see what you did there, bringing
Tied it
it
back
back.
in, yeah.
This guy's a professional host, everybody. I like that.
But I mean, yeah, Ableton. I mean, forgot it is. I actually, this isn't my thought. I mean, I read somebody, this big producer, saying it's better than like the $500,000 studios you had back in the '80s. Um,
Yep.
and what you can get Suite for like Ableton Suite for $800 or something. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
everyone has these tools at their disposal right now. And um, but the interesting thing is, it's not like I wouldn't say there's better music being produced, which is kind of an
Right.
interesting paradox.
Yeah.
So everyone has the tools, but at the end of the day, I think it just comes down to I'm not sure what the factor is really. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this or have observed something similar or
Yeah.
different.
I mean, I think for us, because music, there's a lot more creativity around,
Hmm.
right? Like and it bends to people's tastes, right? So the quality is a little is more subjective.
Right.
Like there is no subjective layer to data quality, right? Like
It works or it
it's
doesn't.
either it is binary, right? It either
Yeah.
works or it doesn't, right? Like, and so for us, I think that's what helps us get to a determinate happy path. But
Hmm.
if there's there's infinite number of ways to go slice a problem, but that problem still has to get solved. There is a success criteria for that problem,
Yeah.
and music is not, right. Like
Right.
it's too variable, right. And so I think, like, to your point, even though there's a bunch of tools, the measure of it should be like, yo, how reliably and quickly are people getting these jobs done,
Right.
right. Like, that's the measure of success that, our experience, like, we are measuring our experience after. And so that's kind of what, what we have to do, and what our mission is, right, is just how can we make the end result of this be better so people can build more relatable, more contextual experiences based off of the data that they have available to them, right? That they were previously unable to get because of just bad tooling. Like, we aren't even at the Ableton stage, right? Like, we're in the early 90s where, you got Pro Tools that are coming out, and you got some other stuff, and it's just like, it's okay, but it's still kind of a dark art, right? And like, you got to pay $10,000 to go to a school to kind of help you reason about
Right.
the system, right? Like, that's where we're at right now.
I think
What we're
it's a good
getting,
point though, because it is about kind of removing a lot of the gatekeeping in the
yep,
tooling space right now. So in the data tooling space, this music
yep,
tooling space, I think is like that's much more solved. But data tooling is interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of gatekeeping. I'd say almost artificially in some ways.
yeah.
Maybe artificially, but it is. There's still some skill, I think, in depending where you go. Um, but yeah, I think the analogy is right. Like Pro Tools. The thing I know that broke music open for me in the late '90s was Reason.
Yep.
Remember that one? But it just made music production for the first time. I'd say robust enough. I mean, there was like Fruity Loops and stuff, but it was kind of that was cool, but it was a bit more lightweight.
Yep.
But it felt like, and then after that, it just sort of exploded. Like Logic, I think, became a lot more popular, and then Ableton came on the scene and just changed
Yeah.
it.
It took it
So
over.
hopefully,
Yeah.
you're like the Ableton of data tools.
I hope
So
so, man. I hope so. That would be high praise. Actually, we want to be the Adobe of data tools. That would be even better.
mm-hmm.
Where it just
Much
works.
bigger, where it just works.
Yeah.
And there's an ecosystem, right? I think that's kind of what the data world needs right now. Because as you pointed out in the beginning of the talk, there's it's extremely fragmented right now,
Yep.
right? Across the entire tool chain. Um, it's I was talking to somebody last week about sort of data mesh architecture and or no, no, it was metadata first architecture, and that might be an idea to help push us along, but it's still really early days. I think there's just been this
Man,
explosion of
that's
tools
a
and
band
nobody can make
aid,
sense of
man.
it. What's that?
That's a band aid to everything. Like, because it's like, at the end of the day, it doesn't necessarily matter what your the metrics or the metadata that you're emitting, right? Like, it's just talking about the types of data that you have, right? And it's like, you just need better data quality on
Mm-hmm.
the and like, you're solving for the wrong problems at that point, right? So I just look, man. I've been around the block, and it's just one of those things where it's just kind of like, I've seen the maturation of this industry, and it's like they all go chasing after kind of these, like, pervasive problems without
Yeah.
understanding where the puck is going to be down the line, right? Which is like, yeah, we get a whole bunch of metrics that are getting emitted, and like events that are getting emitted, and like there's no standardization across them, and like all this other stuff. And it's like, well, why don't you just standardize it? Do it at the
Right.
tool layer, do it at the like you don't have to do anything, right? Like that kind of stuff. So yeah, no,
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. I think it's a good place to end it. But yeah, happy to chat again soon. So
Spend some time, man. I like this, man.
yeah, it's fun. So again, congrats on going GA. That's a really big step. I'm really proud of you, man. It's awesome. So
Yeah, Meroxa.com, Meroxa.com. You'll be able to sign up, get up and going, and do your thing. So
awesome.
yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to chatting again, DeVaris. So yeah,
All right, man.
until next time.
Thanks, Joe.
All right, take it easy, buddy. See ya.